Hey everybody, this is Perch. I like long runs on comics. I think they're intuitive to what comics are. I think that comics is continual serialized storytelling is ultimately kind of the whole point. But not everybody does. And we've been talking about how the big two, or in particular, are putting out increasing miniseries and just short little bursts of comics. And to me, it's a bad thing. But is it to everyone? Well, let's read this mail. It says long runs are entropy to comics. Says, hello, Perch. I don't think modern comics industry can sustain long runs. If you're an avid Comic-Con watcher in its heyday, like me, you noticed one truism. All comics suffer from entropy. Mostly true. But there was one big thing that comics runs would do, and you do see it in the numbers, is when you get a brand new creative team, when you go in a bold new direction, I guess you could say that breaks the run because it's a new creative team. But I guess I'm talking about, in my head, I'm thinking about runs like I like numbers. Uh, then that would boost the sales, and it's even with the same creative team. You look at like some of the stuff that went on during kind of Simonson's run, and there's been a few where, you introduce a popular character, you bring back fan favorite or a villain or something like that, you get a bump. And, I don't think they all declined. And I think the overall base was better. But anyway, let's finish this mail. It says, even your sales video showed this. Every comic run, sans a few, had its biggest issues at the beginning of the run. There is no such thing as momentum in comics. All right, well, interrupt again. The challenge is my sales videos typically were for more recent runs, things within the last 20 years. And one thing that's also true about almost every single one is that they all had massive amounts of hype and variant covers and promotion for the first issue and incentive deals and other things for retailers, and then those went away. While there was a decline, the biggest decline came from the gimmicks at the start. When you pulled the gimmicks away, you got to the true numbers of the books. And then you see things leveling out at a certain level. But one thing you also see is the more you reboot and restart, the Captain Marvel sales video showed this, the Miss Marvel video showed this, the Thor video showed this. Typically, when you reboot and you restart, every time you're setting that floor a little lower. And so in my mind, it's better to stick it out and do, the quote unquote gimmicks like, new creative teams, fan favorite villain, storylines that pay off, that kind of stuff, to boost the numbers or to kind of push things back up versus restart. Because when you restart, you get the gimmicky number one issue, but then everything falls from there. But all right, I will stop interrupting. We'll just read this mail. It said, I think this is okay if you go from selling 500,000 to 20 issues later selling 300,000, but I often see on Comic-Con 50,000 to 20,000. I know you like long runs, but maybe they just don't make practical sense in this market. Maybe the constant reboots of number ones is not them being stupid, but them reacting to market realities. Of course, your argument for long runs is a story argument that longer stories allow the writer to cook, but if no one's reading it by the time it gets good, it's going to be canceled anyway, so what's the point of this exercise? Maybe Steve Orlando is a genius, only 20 issues deep. Cool, we'll never know. Also, just learn how to write short runs. It's not that complicated. Warren Ellis did it with Moon Knight. Moon Knight Watchmen is 12 issues. They should adapt to this new world or die. In my opinion, long runs are an antiquated notion for a bygone era that doesn't exist now. The market is too small and the audience is not sticky enough. We are too distracted for 40, 50, 60 issues. 6 to 12 issue runs, letting some time pass before you bring the series back, sounds better to me. Let us miss Red Tornado, Hawkman, and Vision. We don't need or want to see them every month. Although this sentiment isn't true for every comic, exceptions inform the rule. Spider-Man, Batman, and X-Men are sticky, but Swamp Thing, Plastic Man, and Dead Man always fall in popularity. Maybe canceling a series that's just flailing and costing money is being realistic, even if it is Suicide Squad or damn, even Flash or Green Lantern. Maybe we don't need a Nightwing book if people aren't going to read it. And isn't that what's important? What are the people reading? What's the market telling you? It works for manga, but maybe not for comics. The French have a successful market, and they have schedules of 60-page issues a year. Yeah, they set that expectation. Wrestling, which you love, is one show, maybe 2 or 3 each brand. One holistic storyline you don't have to buy into with 80 books a month. I'm not asking for a complete divestment from long running stories, but maybe the natural mode is not a Zatanna ongoing, which is just dumb, or a Wanda ongoing. Maybe 6 issues is enough. If it does well, we do another. If we've done 5 and all they have done really well, then yeah, we think about a full series. Even in the indie space, most people are not Kirkman. Running your own long running comic is basically a commitment similar to running a small company. If you're new and trying to do a long indie run, you're A, delusional, B, have been convinced that more equals better. As a person who tried when he was younger, with my webcomics, you'll burn out. Most of us early webtooners did. All I'm asking is to be realistic about the world we live in. All right, fair enough. Fairly reasoned. A couple things I'll argue with, though. First off, I think we're mixing a number of things in here. I'm totally in alignment with you. We don't need a Zatanna ongoing. That she as a character can't sustain it, let alone, or some of the others said, Dead Man. I mean, no, there's no world where Dead Man has a long run of an ongoing. The character isn't popular enough. I think Nightwing is on the bubble. He's a popular character, but I think it's still a struggle. And keep in mind what worked in the 70s and 80s for a lot of these characters were, you had the newsstand and you had supermarkets in their place that had to buy into the full complement of all the comics. They weren't picking title by title. If they were, Nightwing wouldn't have, we put it this way, titles like that wouldn't have gone. You wouldn't have had a long Dazzler run. So they took that because they had to, because they wanted Avengers, X-Men, and Fantastic Four. So I think, definitely agree. I think lower, B and C characters, they can't sustain a long series. That said, one thing you said in there, like, why not do 6 issues, and if it works, do another 6 issues, and it works, do another 6 issues. The challenge is, the creator, you kind of, wave your hand at it, but the creator does need to either know that they have time to cook or not. I do believe a lot of writers can adapt to a shorter run, but they need to be told that. And today, a lot of writers come into comics and the editor's like, well, we're going to do this is an ongoing, but we're going to kind of review our options every 3 issues. Okay, well, that doesn't work. I mean, yes, granted, if the title doesn't sell well, of course it's not going to do well, but leaving the writer on a constant bubble and telling them, hey, make a long run with some deep storylines, but hey, also make sure you can wrap it up within an issue because we might cancel out of nowhere. It's inconsistent, and it's very hard to work or learn anything in that process. That's why a lot of writers are just moving to a world of, I think, the self-fulfilling prophecy, where they just write for short runs and they write for one and dones, and nothing matters. And the more nothing matters, the more the audience will tune out. I disagree with you. I do think the audience will read a long run or be invested in a long storyline. I think the examples of this are, frankly, TV. People got in on Game of Thrones. People are getting in on all kinds of shows. I think, Yellow Jackets is still going on, isn't it? I don't know. I'm watching Severance. It's a good show, but there is a certain amount of I'm just torturing myself watching this show. It's well done though. But I mean, and wrestling, yes. I mean, people will tune in if it's good. They will tune in and they will keep going. But if you start writing for short term, if you start, putting out comics that really, have the flavor and feeling of something that is very, very, very temporary, your audience will respond in kind. And so I think, it's not like a chicken and the egg thing, but I think if you write for short runs, you will get the attention span of short runs. But comics and the business needs the attention span of long-term committed customers, one way or another. I think kind of what you're saying here is that, hey, people will keep buying comics. They'll be long-term customers, but they can do that in short runs. And the evidence I have is kind of the opposite. I think the more you do short runs, the more you get short-minded customers. The other thing is, I agree with you, with, hey, a drop is fine if it's going 500,000, 300,000, but going 50,000 to 20,000 is a problem. I agree. But what that's telling you is not that the title keeping going is what's causing it to be 20,000. The title was always going to be 20,000. And this is a really important point because it's where the comic industry is broken right now. If a comic after 3 or 4 issues settles in at 20,000 copies a month, that means that was always the audience it had. The only reason it sold more at the beginning was because it was falsely inflated with gimmicks, with crossovers or variant covers or a number of incentives that went to shops. Anyway, that's the only reason it sold higher in the first place. And if you but that's not sustainable. You can't always like con comic stores into buying heavy amounts of issues in order to get a variant for a different character that's not even in the comic that you bought. It that's it's not, that's not a bait and switch. I'm not sure it's a gimmick, but it's a defeating gimmick, because eventually that people lose interest in that, and what you are left with is this core story, and the core story is worth 20,000. So if you're going to put out like Scarlet Witch, and the only way to get the numbers of Scarlet Witch consistently over 20,000 into like 50,000 is to do a bunch of variants and a guest artist on the first issue and other things that are not sustainable and won't last past that first issue, then you shouldn't be publishing that comic. Bluntly, the character is not popular enough to do it. So you need to, when comics, there's an order of things. You need to shore up your base, and your base are all the comics, all the characters that are, top tier, can sell, can carry their own. So your Spider-Mans, Batmans, X-Men, Avengers, etc. You need to make those world class. Don't erode the base. I see lots of activities right now with DC. It's overdoing it. It's like, how much Batman blood can we squeeze out of this stone? With Marvel, it's putting kind of, at times, absolutely trash creative teams on something and then having issues that go absolutely nowhere and do nothing. But those two activities are going to erode that base out to the point that, you're having to do heavy gimmicks to get them sold. And then you're really screwed, because, the way the comic industry has worked forever, and frankly still works, is you have a handful of really popular characters, and if you treat them well and you do a good job by that, you get a lot of good attention, then you can come in and start putting the supporting characters on the table. So you can then say, all right, Batman and Superman sold really well. Let's have them do a guest appearance in The Flash, and let's kind of boost The Flash up. And okay, now The Flash is selling pretty well. Now let's turn our attention to Black Canary, see if that will work, or whatever. That's what the business needs to be. So I mean, look, you're not wrong, by the way, and also what you train the market to do is what it's going to do. The French and a lot of European comics trained their market that this is how comics are going to be delivered, and it works for them. The U.S. has trained the audience that comics are going to be delivered in a monthly serialized format for the last 60 years. And so if you're going to move from that, you need to have a good plan, and you need to be willing to ride out the transition, which is usually very painful. But there you go. Thank you very much for the mail. I appreciate. What do you guys think? What all do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, of course, and thanks for listening.